Hello everybody. We are working on chapter 2, the book Stop Overthinking. Stop Overthinking, 23 techniques to relieve stress, stop negative spirals, declutter your mind, and focus on the present. There you have it right there. So chapter 2, the title of chapter 2 is The De-Stress Formula and Then Some. Our main goal in de-stressing is to pinpoint exactly what is going on in our heads when we overthink. It's about identifying the triggers that set us off, as well as the effects of that overthinking once it begins. When we can see the process clearly, we can then begin to take informed action, but the necessary starting point, awareness. And I went and I defined awareness. Awareness, knowledge or perception of a situation or fact. You'd be surprised out there. A lot of people aren't aware of the things that they're doing. They're kind of just wandering. So, in this chapter, we'll begin with the basics of overcoming, overthinking, and managing your stress levels. But in each case, what is most important is that we maintain an awareness of ourselves. Awareness is not rumination, though when we are aware, we simply turn our attention onto both our inner and outer experience. Without judgment and without clinging or resisting. We can cultivate this awareness in ourselves by regularly checking in with our bodily sensations, thoughts, and feelings, by making sure that our lifestyle is supporting us in the ways we need it to, and by including some form of mindfulness in everyday life. See? Okay. So he's talking about the 4 A's of stress management. So here it goes. This technique can be like a lifeboat in the storm of stress and overthinking. All you need to remember is 4 techniques. Avoid, alter, accept, and adapt. It can be a comfort in itself to know that really there are only these 4 possible ways to respond to any life stress. The first thing you can do is avoid. Sounds suspiciously simple, but there's a lot of aggravation in life you can simply walk away from. We can't control everything in our life, but we can arrange our circumstances so that we don't have to be in stressful surroundings or with stressful people. If we're honest, we might see that a lot of the stress in our lives is voluntary and we don't have to agree with it. So it's going to be stressful people. That's what he's talking about here. Think about what is stressing you in your environment and how you can take control to moderate or remove it entirely. Okay. When you avoid stress, you're not running away from obligations or denying genuine problems. You're simply learning to say no to stress that is unnecessary and harmful. We can always say no to situations and people that demand too much of us and our resources. Those resources can be mental energy and attention, but they can also be time. If something in your life is gobbling up all your time, you can say no. So it's your decision, right? Look at your to-do list and get rid of the 2 or 3 items that are not urgent and not your priority. Delegate tasks or let someone else take on a responsibility. You don't have to do it all. So the next time you face a stressful prospect, ask yourself, can I just avoid this whole thing? If you can, do it. So that's one option. And they say in here, avoid. If you can't avoid, you might need to find ways to change the situation or alter it, right? So avoid or alter. You always have the option of asking others to change their behavior. And he's basically saying, like, communicate your needs and feelings. So communicate your needs and feelings directly rather than suffering in silence. If you never clearly tell your friend that his stupid jokes really hurt you, you may sit quietly and bear the brunt of it forever, when it would have been easy to tell him how you feel and ask him to stop. So you're going to have to express yourself. A lot of people, they don't do that, especially as kids or teenagers. But not only that, I think as adults also. If you can avoid a stressor, ask what you can do to change it. If your answer is not much, then you might need to go to one step further and accept it. So he's talking about acceptance here. How do you accept a situation you dislike? Firstly, if you dislike it, then you dislike it. Acceptance doesn't mean pretending you don't feel how you feel. It's an acknowledgement that it's okay to feel that way. Validate your own emotions and own them. See, I'm going to repeat that. Validate your own emotions and own them. Don't deny them, right? For example, your boyfriend has just broken up with you via text, and there's not much you can do about his decision. But you can work on accepting the situation by calling up a friend to share your feelings. Okay? If the situation is one in which you've been wronged, acceptance may take the form of trying to find a way to forgive. Remember that forgiveness is something you do for yourself and not the other person. When you forgive, you are releasing yourself from the stress and energy of resenting and blaming the other person. So I'm going to repeat that last part here. When you forgive, you are releasing yourself from the stress and energy of resenting and blaming the other person. So that's very powerful there. Acceptance may also be about the subtle shifts in the way we frame events. We can't change the events themselves, but we can watch how we talk about them inwardly. So it's the inward part and the language we use. For example, instead of saying, I completely failed my course and I wasted my money, I'm such an idiot for not working harder, you could say, I made a mistake and I'm not happy about it. But this one event doesn't define me. I can learn from mistakes and move on. I can do better next time. Acceptance doesn't mean we agree with what happened or that we like it and should try to change it. It only means we gracefully come to terms with what we can realistically change, so we can focus on what we can. Okay? In the long term, we do our best in the face of stress if we can adapt. So this is the adapt part. Adapting means making more lasting changes to our worldview, our goals, or our perception and expectations. Picture someone who is perfectionist and is always stressed out because they never seem to meet their high standards. The best approach isn't that they find a way to be Superman, but instead lower their expectations so they're more reasonable and in line with reality. So that right there makes a lot of sense. Adapting to stress means we change ourselves to better cope with life. You might simply refuse to engage in depressing thoughts and deliberately practice being a person who is more optimistic. When we alter our perspective, we can see things differently. Is this a crisis or a challenge? Oh, is this a crisis or a challenge? You ask yourself. It has a question mark. So you ask yourself, is this a crisis or a challenge? How does this obstacle look when we tell ourselves, I'm a resilient person, compared to when we tell ourselves, life isn't fair. This will end badly like everything does. So I'll repeat that part. So when we alter our perspective, we can see things differently. Is this a crisis or a challenge? How does this obstacle look when we tell ourselves, I'm a resilient person, compared to when we tell ourselves, life isn't fair. This will end badly like everything does. Okay? When we adapt to stress, we find ways to make ourselves stronger. We build a worldview for ourselves that empower us. For example, someone might get into the habit of making a gratitude list every day of all the wonderful things they are actually blessed with in life. Another person might meditate on their own personal code or say a mantra daily to remind them that they are strong and they can get through adversity. So those are like positive affirmations. If we have an arsenal of powerful attitudes, ideas, philosophies, and inspiration, we can go into the world knowing we can handle stress and maybe even be better people for it. So right there, very, very, this is very informative here. Okay, so those are the 4 A's of stress. Basically, it's avoid, alter, accept, or adapt. When you find yourself feeling anxious, pause and run through each of them in sequence. No matter how stressful the situation, there is a way for you to engage with it mindfully and proactively. You are not helpless in the face of stress. You have tools at your disposal. To use these tools, all it takes is a little awareness. Okay? so let me see here. What else he's talking about here? Excuse me. Okay, so stress diaries. Stress diaries. I said diaries. I meant diaries. Stress diaries and journals. Another concrete way to bring more awareness to your daily experience of stress is to write it all down. Now, I can tell you from experience, this works to write it out. Whether it's writing your goals, trying to, eliminate stress is basically what he's talking about here. See, when I was going through a divorce, I'm in my final stages of divorce, but when my ex-wife was leaving voicemails on my phone, leaving threats, and just being belligerent, I had to transcribe these voicemails. I would download them to my computer, then transcribe them word for word, and then I would add notes. And when I did that, I was writing out what she was saying word for word, but the notes that I was adding, it was kind of a stress relief, and that's what this is talking about here. So I'll repeat that. Another concrete way to bring more awareness to your daily experience of stress is to write it all down. Okay, a stress diary is simply a written record of your level of stress and the accompanying information, which you can analyze later and use to take steps to manage stress. We all need some stress in life, so this diary can help us identify our optimal range. Okay, so this is like an example of a diary. It's saying, it's giving you the date, so you write down the date and the time, and this is an example. It says, received a worrying message about dad needing surgery on his shoulder. Feeling around 4 out of 10. So 10 being super stressed, 1 not being at all stressed. So feeling around 4 out of 10, kind of apprehensive and a little tired. Weird not feeling in my stomach. Trouble staying focused on work, only working at about 1/10 effectiveness. I think I feel this way because I'm worried about something bad happening to him. I'm avoiding replying to the message, but I think this is making anxiety worse. So that's just an entry there. Excuse me. Make an entry every time you feel your mood shifting or when you're noticeably stressed. Keep a stress diary for a few days or a week, then sit down to analyze it and find any patterns. So he's saying, number 1, what are the most frequent causes of stress? Example, or i.e., what usually comes before a sudden rise in stress or drop in mood? How do these events typically affect your productivity? How do you normally respond to these events, emotionally and behaviorally, and is your approach working? How do I identify a level of stress that was comfortable and beneficial for your productivity? That's basically the analysis of the part. So when you analyze your stress diary like this, you are working with real data that can help you make insightful changes. You may even be surprised at some findings. Only in writing things down in the moment do you see clear patterns emerge. You don't need to keep a stress diary forever. In fact, after using it a few weeks, the process might become automatic and you may develop more spontaneous awareness in the moment as stress is occurring. See, so it's kind of automatic. After a while, you get used to it. But, okay. Once you have a handle on the real causes of stress in your life, you can use something like the 4 A's technique. Remember the avoid, alter, accept, and adapt. To take action or else rearrange your lifestyle or schedule to moderate stress. If you notice that all your stress is coming from one person, you can draw some boundaries around your relationship. That's going to be very important here. So boundaries around people, around toxic relationships. So if you notice that your normal response of getting angry tends to make things harder to handle, you can begin to work on your anger. If your job is a continued source of worry, you can gauge how bad it is and take action both short term, like taking a holiday, basically like taking a day off, or longer term, considering getting a different job. Guys, this is very important here because job-related stress is probably like the #1 killer. I don't know if that's how it is today, but man, like job-related stress, it's really gonna get you. And if you don't change it, then you go like month after month, year after year with the same results, you're not getting any further. You're not getting ahead. You're just suffering in that same spot. So getting a different job, it's going to be critical to your health. Okay, writing things down can relieve stress on its own, but it can also help you gather your thoughts, hash out problems, find insights, and process any issues you're going through. It's like your journal is an informal therapist. So journaling and diaries, according to what you like, what works in your situation. So using journaling, okay, if you're battling low mood and find your anxiety is general and seems to affect everything, you might find a gratitude journal helpful. So a gratitude journal, look, simply, this works. I've done this. Simply list 5 things daily that you are thankful for, even if it's nothing more exciting than your morning cup of coffee or the fact that you have a nice new pair of socks. This can subtly shift your focus onto your resources and possibilities and reframe your experience. So you're thinking positively. I have a new pair of socks. I have a, perfect cup of coffee with my favorite creamer. So you're focusing on your resources and the possibilities to reframe your experience. Okay, so it says here, try to finish every journaling session with something positive and grounding. Recite a mantra. See, recite a mantra, that's more like the affirmations. Visualize something positive or consider some possibilities and solutions going forward. If you don't make sure to return to a positive headspace, journaling may start to feel like it only encourages more unhappiness and overthinking. So if it's always negative, and you finish negative, then it's kind of it's just hurting you. So the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding technique. Okay, now this is really, really good. Stress journals and the 4 A's technique can be used to great effect when paired together, especially if done regularly. Okay. But sometimes you need a technique that will bring immediate relief to a stressful situation. So he's talking about immediate relief. Okay, the following technique is often used by those who experience panic attacks. It's a way to halt the anxiety spiral before it runs away with you. You don't have to panic. You don't have to have a panic disorder to benefit though. Okay. Excuse me. The idea is simple. When we overthink and ruminate and stress, we are out of the moment. We chew on thoughts of the past or entertain possibilities in the future. Right? Man, that makes a lot of sense. We think about what if and run our minds ragged on memories, ideas, probabilities, wishes, and fears. Right? Doubt and fear, okay? So if we can pull our conscious awareness back into the present, we can halt some of this overthinking, and we can do this by checking in with the 5 senses, right? To put it in another way, the brain can carry all over the place, but the body and its senses is only ever one place, the present, right? So this is really good stuff here. Okay, in moments of panic, we can get really caught up in ideas and thoughts, even though in reality, we are perfectly safe and sound. And there is nothing in our immediate situation to threaten us with panic. However, we can be sitting in perfect peace in a sunny garden somewhere and nevertheless feel like we're going to die. Such is the power of the mind. That is golden. Next time you feel anxiety and panic spiraling out of control, try this. Stop, take a breath, and look around you. First, is what he's saying. Find 5 things in your environment that you can see. So this is one of the first steps. So this is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is the 5. So first step you want to do, find 5 things in your environment that you can see. Next, try to find 4 things in your environment that you can feel or touch. Next, find 3 things that you can hear. Next, find 2 things you can smell. Next, or finally, find 1 thing that you can taste. So it's saying here, maybe the lingering flavor of coffee on your tongue. Even if you can't find anything, just dwell for a moment on what your taste buds are sensing. Are they really off, or does your mouth almost have a taste of its own? When you stop to become aware of it, stay there for a moment and explore that sensation. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is awesome. This works because what you're doing is you're coming down to the present. It says, the last sentence there, stay there for a moment and explore that sensation. So, okay. The point of this exercise is on the surface distraction. While your senses are active, your brain is engaged in something other than endless rumination, and your overthinking is halted. You put a spanner in the works and stop runaway thoughts. Practice this technique often enough, and you may notice that it instantly calms you and slows you down. Okay, narrative therapy and externalization. A final technique we'll consider comes from the world of narrative therapy, which explores the way that our lives are often construed as stories or narratives. People are meaning-making machines, and we make meaning by telling stories about who we are and what the events of our lives signify. With narrative therapy, we can essentially rewrite these stories to find healing and basically live like happily ever after, okay? Because we tell ourselves our own stories, the stories of our lives. We program that. We've already discussed that a big part of overcoming anxiety is to look at our mental models and consciously make decisions about how we want to run our lives. When we are the narrator of our own stories, we take charge, reframe, and are empowered to make new meanings. The big tenet behind narrative therapy is that people are separate from their problems. And indeed, this idea underpins a popular technique called externalization. So this is awesome here. Okay, a big step is to realize that you really are in control and are the author of your own experience. Other people are not to blame for our perception, and equally they cannot save or teach us. We are the experts of our own experience. This is gold right here. Okay, look. Our mental models are little like patterns or filters or repeating motifs. If your life was a movie, what genre would it be? What role would you always play, and how would the story play out? When we can see that our interpretations and frames influence our experience, we are empowered to change them for ourselves. Okay? For example, overthinkers tend to feel powerless. But what if they changed the story and saw themselves as being responsible and capable? So it's just what you're telling yourself. Okay, let's return to externalization. You are not your problems. You are not your failures. If you can put distance between yourself and your life changes, you can gain perspective and untangle your sense of identity and self-worth from the temporary moment you're experiencing. Awesome. If you're feeling overwhelmed, it may help to repeat the mantra to yourself: I am not my problems. So externalize that, and basically that's what it's saying. You're not your problems. Okay. If you're inclined to use creativity to externalize, and what he's saying is either write it out, draw, or paint, or even sing or dance your problems and make them real outside of your body. And for me, it's exercise. So before I read this book, I used to exercise to escape, like the energy, just focus on something else. This is what he's explaining, and it makes a lot of sense to me. So it comes around. It's coming. It makes more sense now that I'm reading it and I'm doing it. Another technique used in narrative therapy is deconstruction. So he's just saying here, if we're feeling lost in rumination, we can use story to help us break down or deconstruct a big scary problem into smaller, easier ones. Okay, a story is a way to organize, to slow things down, and to remind you that you are in control when it comes to where and how you place your attention. You cannot look at everything all at once. Trying to do so often makes you feel powerless and small in the face of overwhelming thoughts. But as in any good story, you don't have to figure everything out immediately or solve every problem all at one time. Some ways to bring this construction into your own life. Okay, so these are some ways here. If things are feeling disastrous, stop and force yourself to focus on the single thing that is most important right now. If you're catastrophizing about things that may happen tomorrow or next year or whenever, set those aside and look at what matters today only, or perhaps only what matters in this very moment. Ask yourself, what single next step can you take? Don't worry about the next 20 steps. Just take the next step you need to, and then you can go from there. See, this is golden. This really helps. I've experienced this. Okay. Here we go. If you find yourself returning to distressing memories from the past, take a moment to deliberately lay out your history, perhaps even writing it down or laying it out on a chart. Break down events into episodes and look for themes, patterns, and a thread that links them all together. See how the present moment ties into the past. And then ask yourself what you can do to take charge of your own narrative. For example, if you're cringing over mistakes you made in the past, you might construct a story where you weren't just an idiot who did something wrong, but you were young and learning, and in your development, you're continually getting better. You can see that your embarrassment now is proof of you being a more mature person. You can see the whole picture, one of growth and progress. Doesn't that feel better than simply churning over a humiliating comment you made once in the 5th grade? Guys, it does go back that far. It does. Going back all the way to childhood experiences, we continue to tell ourselves things that happened when we were, for example, in the 5th grade. Anxiety and overthinking have a way of fracturing our attention and creating chaos and confusion. What did I just say, right? So when we deconstruct all of these thoughts, however, we see that many of them are just noise and we don't necessarily have to entertain them. Maybe you're primarily concerned about your health, and off that single worry branches a million other thoughts of losing your job, of dying, expensive medical bills, etc. Deconstructing these means asking, what is this thought really about? And distinguishing thoughts that derail and distract from those where you can actually make meaningful changes. Okay, so it's just, it's giving me some takeaways, basically the final parts here. So it's just, that's it. You know, it's just showing here, you identified what overthinking is. And there are many things you can do to de-stress and calm an anxious, overthinking mind that are simple yet effective. Avoid, alter, accept, and adapt. Journaling, diarying, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, coming down to the present. That's chapter 2. I'll see you in chapter 3.